What's going on, fam? Welcome to the Get the Bag podcast, episode 24. What's up? What's up? I'm your host, Gladia Castro. Got my
What's up?
co-host, Tim Park. We up in here. Quick reminder, guys, drop your comments, questions in the chat throughout the conversation. We love to get some engagement. Happy to help any way we can. And of course, don't forget to show some love, hit subscribe, hit like, hit those reminders. Follow us on IG at get_the bag podcast, and we'll get it rolling. Today's episode, I think, will be really interesting, in that a lot of people don't really know how to leverage their relationships with cash buyers, hedge funds, family offices, you name it, and how it's super beneficial in your real estate business. So we're going to dig a little deep into what's worked for us, kind of how we, when we initially got started, what did that process look like? So it'll be really fun. I think a lot of people will take a lot out of this. So Tim, why don't you tell me how, kind of starting with your first question, how did you find your first buyer on your first deal? Like, kind of walk us through that.
Yeah, so when I first got into the real estate investing, it was, kind of how we were taught, like how to, once you get the deal locked up, now it's trying to find a buyer or a fix and flipper in that area that would like to actually acquire that property. So um, I did the traditional way, like, try to do Facebook Marketplace, try to do, just post it out. And I didn't get a lot of traction on that.
Mm,
And I felt like, okay, there has to be a better way. And what I did was I actually purchased the list too. So there's this website out there. I think we'll list it in the description on this video, but um, real estate network or wealth network, and
yeah.
you could buy a buyer's list off of that. And what I did was they have a whole site where you can just type in the address of your property that you locked up, and you can see what cash buyers are in the area. Um, and one thing, I've done this like more deals than even the last deal that I have right now. So
Hmm.
where you do the prop stream hack, right?
Right.
So you basically you look up cash buyers around the property that you just locked up, and then you just kind of one by one make that list and reach out to them. And then, sometimes you source out LLCs, sometimes you don't. You can actually filter that out as well. But yeah, the real estate wealth network is where I found my buyer. I was just calling back and forth. But, my deal was, since I had no buyers list,
Hmm.
I felt like, because usually people get a buyer locked up within 24 hours, right?
Right. Right.
A- and I was new, so I didn't have that buyer's list. So I felt like, giving me a couple weeks to lock up a buyer was the best, solution. But if I didn't lock it up, I would try to move forward. But that
Yeah.
was my first like way of actually getting a buyer, was that because I felt like the Facebook Marketplace and even Craigslist and all that wasn't working for me, and I was just getting a lot of maybe daisy chain people or other wholesalers that wanted to jump in on the deal. But that's kind of how. What about you on your first one?
Yeah, it's funny because I eventually used the Wealth Network. I think they also have
Hmm.
a database, right? Like a feed, almost like a
Yep.
prop stream, where it's like, all right, these are all the cash buyers in this neighborhood or in this zip code. But for my first deal, I went the traditional way. I found my buyer through I think Facebook or Craigslist. I can't remember. So I followed, being part of Chris Jefferson's program. He
Hmm.
kind of talks about like, okay, I mean, when you're starting out and you have no buyers, like you have to literally start from scratch a lot of times,
Right.
which is why we recommend, like, hey, if there's somebody in your area or if you're doing virtual like connect with them, because they'll have those relationships with buyers already, so you can just JV, right?
Mhm.
And starting out, I didn't really know that many people, or I didn't like feel comfortable just being like, hey, and that's maybe like my own like issue there. But like I did it all myself. So after
Mhm.
I locked it up, I did the email template that I sent out to um and this is also another way, is people are usually going on Facebook groups. So if you're in a
Mhm.
specific market, just type in like, for example, Chattanooga, Tennessee real estate, and usually all of like the groups will show up. So I'm able to kind of pick and choose those, or join all of those groups. And then a lot of times I kind of scan that entire group page for, because sometimes this is usually a trick told by wholesalers to do, is like, hey, I'm a cash buyer, or
Mhm.
hey, I have this deal, like where where are the cash buyers at? And usually people post their emails. So that's what I was doing, is I was scoping through those pages and copying those emails and putting them into a spreadsheet, or like whatever CRM I was using at the time. And so I was able to compile like 10 to 15 emails from people. And at this time I was like, hey, I don't know if they're a real buyer or not, but I'm going to give it a
Mhm.
shot. So I took that list that I compiled from the Facebook groups. I sent an email out. I also created a post in those same Facebook groups to market my deal. I also posted it on Craigslist, because this
Mhm.
took a little bit longer to lock up. It took about probably a week to lock up, and I had some. I can tell right away, like daisy chain, and
Mhm.
people, and then maybe there's something we'll elaborate more on, things to look out for
Right.
when like looking for a cash buyer. But I was just new, when you start off, you don't really know what you're doing. Like you're just like
Mhm.
failing forward.
Yeah.
You're just going through like with just connecting with people. So finally, they weren't a hedge fund, but they were a bigger company. They reached out and gave me a specific price. And I didn't even know back then that I could like negotiate with them either. So whatever price they gave me, I was like, all right, cool.
Right.
Like,
You were just happy to have the deal, or
yeah, like,
like
oh my god,
lock it
the
up.
buyers got back to me, they gave me a number, and then another buyer came in too, but I think he was
Mhm.
actually a wholesaler, and he was like, "Oh, we'd have to be at this price." It was way lower, so I went with the other buyer, and then I renegotiated with the seller,
Mhm.
and got them down, and that's how I got my first deal. So, I mean, there's different ways to do it. It's just
Mhm.
taking action and just figuring out. A lot of people be like, "I have to get the process down exactly." Um, it's like, no, use your network, or whoever you have
Mhm.
in this case. Um, I was just kind of starting out, so I kind of wanted to learn the process instead of like
Right.
asking somebody else to work with me. Um,
Right.
but yeah, that's how I got mine.
That's awesome. I know that, like, after your first one, we all kind of were like, "Oh my gosh, that was." It's an amazing feeling, right?
It's real. You have the check in your hand,
Yeah,
like,
absolutely, absolutely. And at that point, I think I felt like, okay, well, that took me a little bit longer than I wanted to lock up
mm,
on a buyer, and so I think that propelled me to try to build my buyers list.
mhm.
And maybe it's the same way with you. What was some of the ways maybe that you kind of went forward after your first deal to try and acquire more buyers within your market?
Yeah, so I with the first buyer, she was just really nice. I tried to just like create a relationship there, because
Hmm.
like we talk about this a lot, real estate, it's all about relationships. It's
Yeah.
all about the long-term vision. You can't, and this is why people with like integrity, like you
Hmm.
have to go a certain way about how you handle like your business. So for me, it was like, hey, if I'm like, if we're working together, like that's a way to create like leverage relationships, where it's like, hey, I'm looking out for you, you're looking out for me.
Hmm.
And so I was able to create some form of a relationship where I was like, hey, I know what you guys are looking for. Let me try to, go ahead and look for deals like that. And so I knew, I was like, okay, I can't just depend on one buyer, because that's something that we're
Right.
taught as well. But sometimes when you're starting out, it may be helpful to like build that momentum.
Mhm.
But you still want to venture out. It's like kind of like dating. You're still kind of figuring it out. You can't just put all your eggs in one basket and then you end up being like, well, this wasn't worth it. You have
Right.
to kind of like, scope the scene and see for yourself. So I just kind of was more of like, hey, how can I help you? How can I add value? And then like
Mhm.
anywhere else where it's like, hey, if you need any help, I'm happy to send over, whatever deals, like what are you looking for? Um,
Mhm.
so I was able to do it that way. Virtually is also a little bit tougher as well
Mhm.
because you have to communicate either through phone calls or whatever. You can't really meet up in person.
Mhm.
But that's always where you take it to the next level and you think about the long game, right? Of
Yeah.
like leveraging relationships because you never know. They may bring you something, you may bring something to them, and then it turns into something else. So that's kind of how I towards that afterwards, and then just kind of doing the same strategies that you talked about
Mhm.
on um, prop stream, doing reverse engineering and just reaching out to people, or going on Facebook groups and just introducing myself, just stuff like that people don't talk about. I mean, we talk about on the acquisition side, like building rapport
Right.
with sellers, but it's the same thing
Mhm.
with buyers. They're two of the
Absolutely.
same in a way where it's like, hey, you're building rapport with these buyers, you're adding value. And if they like you, like they'll want to stick around and work with you. That's the biggest thing
Yeah.
is like you don't want to get shut down because of some shady stuff that you did for the
Mhm.
instant gratification. So I always kind of kept that in mind when I came with creating relationships with buyers. But
Mhm.
one thing that I really want to do is like actually meet up with certain buyers. That's something I
Mhm.
haven't done because in the market I'm in, it's a little bit um, more difficult. Things are kind of scattered.
Mhm.
There's people all over the place, but like actually like meeting up like for coffee, lunch, stuff
Mhm.
like that. I know you've kind of done that, so I'd be curious to see like how you went from um connecting with somebody over the phone or email to like actually meeting them in person to see like how
Right.
that went.
Right. Yeah, it was funny because the second deal that I got was from the general contractor from my first deal, right?
Mhm.
And how that came about was that my first deal had a tenant in there, so the contract was contingent on the tenant leaving.
Mhm.
So the tenant was out, and we did a final inspection, and the investor's realtor had brought the general contractor, and we kind of sidebarred after the tour of the house and everything was good. Realtor said, we'll close escrow starting tomorrow. And I just got to talking to the general contractor afterwards, and
Mhm.
she had left already. And I told him what I did, and how I find these properties in this area. And he goes, "Well, if you find any more properties, I'd love to be on that list you send these properties to." I was like, "Yeah, that'd be great." And I said, "Are you fixing flipping on your own?" He goes, "Yeah, absolutely." He goes, "These investors hire me to, flip the house, but I do some on the side as well." And I was
Mm.
like, "Great." So that's how we got to talking, and he actually bought my second deal. Like,
Right.
it was pretty cool. Uh, uh, just networking that way, just by telling the general contractor what I do and how I get the deals and all this. So that
That's
was
it.
really cool. But yeah, it that is it. I mean, it's like you try to you know I think a lot of people just like, you go through that process and you don't think about, talking to the people that might can get you another buyer, or they might be a buyer themselves, right? So
Mm.
that's why I always say, you got to talk to kind of everybody, because you just don't know where the next deal is going to come from, or where your next buyer is going to come from. Um,
Right. I love that.
yeah.
I love that. It's just kind of taking advantage of just talking,
Hmm.
just using that as an opportunity. And I think people, and hey, I'm one of those people. I'm not much of a talker as it
Hmm.
is. Like even in social events, like my ass gets tired. I'm like, all
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Time to leave this party.
That's
But it's
funny.
there's definitely a way to do it where it's like
Mhm.
you're not considering, how anything is benefiting you, but it's like, hey,
Sure.
I mean, it's as easy as just saying, sometimes I know people that, are wearing real estate gear and they're like, hey, what do you do? And that's how you
Mhm.
kind of get a conversation. So it's just really getting they call it the elevator pitch. Like,
Mhm.
what do you
Mhm.
do in 10 seconds? Like how, like
Right.
practicing that, like talking about, a lot of
Exactly.
people don't, because again, it's the long real estate's a long game. It's all like relationships. So if people were
Mhm.
to ask you what you do, can you answer it in 10 seconds? Like,
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, just in the way, so you don't want to be like, yeah, well then I do this, and like, it has to be. It's all a story. Like, how can
Yeah,
you capture this
exactly.
person's attention, and to want to work with you too?
Mhm.
So I think that's always the trick there. But I mean, clearly the relationships that you've built
Mhm.
already, they may not seem like it's paying off up front, but like you're starting to see the fruits of that, right? Like
Yeah,
in
definitely.
leveraging those relationships. So why don't you kind of talk about, and I think we've talked about it throughout the
Mhm.
various episodes we've had in terms of how you connected to the family office. Like, what sort of tools have you used to reach out to these buyers or brokers,
Mhm.
or you name it?
So I've leveraged a lot of social media with my outreach, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, now TikTok, but I also leverage LinkedIn a lot, and
Right. Not many people
that's
use LinkedIn, I feel like, because people
no,
always think
no.
LinkedIn is for finding jobs, but it's so much more, or it's becoming that.
Exactly, and they're changing their I think a lot of their algorithms to be more like other social media, but more strictly for businessing and networking.
Right.
And I've been utilizing LinkedIn for the last year to help build my buyers list a lot. Just reaching out to acquisition managers or acquisition directors, and then from there, if they connect with me, I connect with like the president or CEO of that particular fund, or managing director or whatever it is, and or company. So I'm just being more mindful of getting more people that I can send deals to in my markets, and
What does that look like? Like, show us like, what's an example, message that you would send to them?
yeah, absolutely. So, what I usually do is I'll go on there and then I'll just search for acquisition managers or acquisition directors, and then they'll pull a list, right? And then I usually hit people
Mhm,
as a filter, and then it'll show their job description as acquisition director or manager.
mhm,
And then if it's in the markets that I work, I definitely connect with them, right? Especially in California, and then other markets that I'm in. And then when I get a connection, they connect with me back. I'll send them a little message and saying, thanks for connecting. you know um, I have properties available in your market. What are some of your criteria? I'd love to do business with you, right? Or
mm,
I may say, I would love to grab a coffee, or since we're close by, just to get just to get to know you a little bit better.
mm,
So
mhm.
so I just drop little nuggets in there in the message, just letting you know that what I do, and what, right, because they're always looking for deals. I mean, acquisition managers are always looking for deals. So
Right.
anything you can say within the message that allows them to know that you are someone that can provide them deals, then they'll hit you back for sure. I know
I love that.
yeah, yeah, and within our group, I know Zach. He's another coach within Chris Jefferson's group, and I told him about the what I do in LinkedIn, and he's like, "Man, I don't even have LinkedIn," and so
Right.
he started LinkedIn, and then he texted me like 2 days later and said, "Man, I found my buyer I've been looking for a while." Just messaging him on LinkedIn. I was like, "Man, that's great. I'm so happy for you." So it does work, and that's one of the things I leverage for sure. But going back to your original question about with a family office, it was a situation where I had connected with a lot of people on Facebook, and then I think I saw, um, a suggested friends on
Mhm.
there, and then uh, under her name was Family Office, and I was like, hmm. So I just clicked on it, connected, liked a few of her posts and stuff like that, and then that's when I had the 8 apartment,
Right.
deal under contract. So I just said, "What the heck? I'm just gonna pitch it." So I told her, I private messaged her and said, "Hey, I enjoy your content. I would love to connect. By the way, I have a 8 unit apartment complex that are under contract. Not sure if you're interested. Just let me know." And then she was like, "What's your number?" And she called and we talked about it. And that's kind
Mhm.
of the first connection. Like, it was because of a deal, and that's the
Right.
best entry point to get to any buyer is having a
Oh, yeah, you
deal.
gotta have a deal.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's like that, the door is cracked when you have a deal. I mean, a lot of the
Mhm.
times when you don't have a deal, the door is shut and you're just like you're talking to sellers, you're cold calling them, right? And
Right.
but with a deal, you have the door already cracked, so it's an opportunity for you to actually, talk about the deal, but also talk about what you do.
Yeah, and, I think that's a great point. Definitely if you have a deal, but if you're just starting out, I mean, piece it depends. I've heard,
Yeah.
where it's like, "Hey, okay, focus on getting sellers and getting that deal." But then I hear other
Mhm.
people like, "Hey, focus on building relationships with buyers." But then people are like, "Well, you need a deal," like, like you mentioned. But I think either
Mhm.
way, like, as long as you're taking action, you can still like, as you're looking to get your deal, you can still network with buyers. Some
Right.
people may not, because they're like, okay, it depends on the person, right? Some people may
Sure.
be kind enough to follow up, be like, yeah, this is our criteria, or they'll email you, their criteria, because a lot of times they have like their requirements in like a PDF or something
Right.
that they'll share
Right.
with you. But you can do both as you're building your list as well. And I think that's like really the power of LinkedIn. And it doesn't matter like what industry you're in, because that was
Mhm.
something me, because I'm in like product and tech. When I did
Mhm.
the transition from like nonprofits, working with nonprofits, to like, hey, I want to get in tech as a designer. Um, I'm switching gears, completely different industries. You're walking to the tech world, it's a whole different world compared to
Yeah.
anything else. But I leverage LinkedIn as well in that format, and the same strategies that I use there, I definitely can use in real estate as well, because what
Mhm.
you did is you set your profile up too. So unless you
Mhm.
have a 9 to 5, it may be different, but you want like your LinkedIn profile page, you want it to like look like, okay, I'm the owner of X
Mhm.
company, or I'm a real estate investor, because that's going to pop too. If you're messaging
Mhm.
someone and they see like, oh, you're a real estate investor, like there's power in that. And maybe if,
Mhm.
unless you said you didn't really have anything in your profile, they may not really want to reply back, because they're like, who the hell is this person? They don't even have a
Right.
photo. They don't have, so like just the same thing you do in IG or TikTok, where you have a
Mhm.
profile picture, have like a nice picture on LinkedIn. A profile like
Absolutely.
that shouldn't take, that's free. That's no time, much time
Yeah.
to take in that. But it's just reaching out to people that like just stick out with you. If it's somebody that you're kind of like, oh, that person seems kind of cool, or like they're in my area, and just kind of reach out and like add value
Mhm.
first. We always say that. Don't just
100%.
even if like you don't have a deal, just be like, hey, listen, like I'm an investor in this area, and I just want to connect, because I really like what you guys are doing, what your company's doing, and
Mhm.
I would love to help out in any way. You're free for coffee or connect on the phone or whatever the case may be. Whereas, people may come at it like, hey, what can you do for me? So
Yeah.
approaching it that
Yeah.
way, I think is really key. But you're marketing yourself, and a lot of times when
Mhm.
you're working with cash buyers, so you want to present yourself as a certain way. It's building your brand, and that's what
Absolutely.
takes you from a hustle to like a real business in the long game, as we've
100%.
talked about. So I
Yeah.
love that you've
That's
leveraged
awesome.
LinkedIn and other social medias, because I think that's so underrated right now.
Mhm. Mhm. And, going back to the message, I always say that, how can I provide you value, right?
Right.
I don't really ask them, um, you know, uh, eh, I can do this all for you, or whatever the case may be, or what you can do for me, type of thing. I'm all about, like, how can I bring you value? I have a certain, expertise in the industry. What do you kind of need help with? Or, it might not be that it's a deal. It might be like, hey, you know, um, can you look at this particular deal? Or, it just all depends, because especially dealing with brokers, right?
Mhm.
I network with a lot of brokers, and especially on the commercial and multifamily side of things. It's building that rapport with them to have them feel comfortable, because they have buyers, and they have those relationships. But for them to be comfortable and say, "Hey, send me a deal, or send me one of your deals that you have contracts on," then it's that's that's kind of golden, right? And then they
Mhm.
pass it on to them, and then you just work out the deal, like deal points, and what's the split, or and that's all about that business, and being
Mhm.
upfront and honest about, like, what your intentions are, how we're going to make money together, and build that rapport with those brokers as well too. So I think
Yeah.
just adding value and how you can help that person, whether they're acquisitions or a broker, or another investor.
Yeah, absolutely. And this all falls under disposition, right? Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
buyers, if we're talking
Right.
about the business. So people don't think about it, like you should create a process for that. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you're going into, let's just say you started from scratch, you're going into a new market, for example, where you don't have any relationships, kind of like where would you start from there? Like what's the process? And maybe for some it's like, okay, I'm gonna call buy cash buyers, or
Mm-hmm.
hey, I'm gonna do a few posts on
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn or Facebook, or my process is reach out to 10 investors or 10 brokers, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think to really treat it like a business, there has to be a process. And this is why so many people are able to scale so quickly in new markets, is because they have a disposition process, they have an acquisition
Mm-hmm.
process, they have a transaction process. It's
Right.
literally, I think even Austin, who we had on last week, he talked about his process in opening with new markets.
Mm-hmm.
And like, this is how we generally do it. So with like cash buyers, I mean, it's the same
Mm-hmm.
way. Like, there's no excuse, no matter like what market you're in, you should be able to find somebody. And if in your and why market research is so good as well and important, if you can't find cash buyers in that market, then it's not, you're not going to be really successful. It's going to be really
Yeah.
tough if you're starting out. So
Absolutely.
what would, if you were in a new market, kind of what would be your process in leveraging and like creating relationships with buyers, agents, brokers?
Mm-hmm. And usually, like, let's say I go into a market, first, to see if there's cash buyers, I definitely do kind of the prop stream hack and see, if I have a couple deals in the area, I definitely look and make sure that there's adequate buyers in the area. And then from there, I'm always like, when we're in the business, we're always moving from deal to deal, or we're trying to close this deal. There's not really that time for, actively looking for buyers, new buyers, right? We have
Mhm.
our existing buyers, but I always set some time in the evening time to go through, like, LinkedIn, or my connections with people that I meet throughout the day, either
Mhm.
sending them an email, or, connecting them with, um, in LinkedIn. And what
Mhm.
this is, a secret that I kind of do, is that I'll follow people, but some of these people actually post on to LinkedIn, like, maybe something that they're developing, right? They might show a new development, but you realize in LinkedIn, they don't get a lot of engagement on
Mm.
their posts. And so when there's only like 10 people liking their post, right? and no comments, you comment on it. They're going to
Mm,
remember you commenting on their post because then they're going to recognize you. You're going to stand out from that point. So when you go back
yeah.
to messaging them, they're going to remember you because you're engaging on their posts,
You're
right?
adding value to them one way or
Yep,
another, and if they handle
absolutely.
it correctly, they should I mean, for the most part, they should reply back or at least hit you with a like or something.
Absolutely,
I love that.
absolutely. So I usually spend time in the evening time before I go to bed to try to connect and with people on LinkedIn, and that's been beneficial for me just to make new connections. But with a process of going into a new market is definitely, trying to lock up a deal or JV with somebody that's already in the market and
Yeah,
they have a buyer, but then having a deal is just a little bit easier to engage other buyers. But my suggestion to you is as get into this new market or as you're looking for buyers, you have to interview these buyers too,
right, do
because
due
a lot of
diligence.
these yeah, exactly. A lot of these buyers might be wholesalers too. So you have to make sure that you're going to be dealing with the right person, ask for, proof of funds, make sure even ask for other deals that they have done in the area. Kind
Yeah.
of do your research on that buyer. I know you don't have that much time to do it, but spending some little time to actually research that right buyer is going to save you time and money in the long run, right?
Yeah, that's a really great tip, and, daisy chain, like, what is
Yeah.
daisy chain? Um, yeah, why don't you tell
Yeah.
us?
So daisy chain is probably usually another wholesaler that doesn't is acting like an investor or acting like they have money, but
Mhm,
they don't. They're just going to source the deal to another
another
investor, another
right.
buyer. But they might source it to another wholesaler that has a
Right,
buyer. So that's what we're calling the daisy chain because there's so many maybe hands in the pot that
right.
you get bogged down and you don't know when you're going to get that deal closed or someone's going to
Just take your
you
deal in a
take your
way.
deal, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you want to avoid those things, and some of the things are asking the appropriate question, and how many deals have you done, or what are some of the deals that you've closed on? Do you have proof of funds that you can provide? These are just preliminary questions that you can try to eliminate some of the daisy chain
Oh, yeah,
people
or
that
like,
are out there.
"Hey, it's a $10,000 deposit."
Hmm.
Just stuff like and
Absolutely.
sometimes some people will just be like, "Okay, yeah, sure," 'cause they like especially if they're experienced daisy chainers,
Hmm.
they'll they may
Exactly.
have a fake you can also get a fake proof of funds one way or
Mhm.
another, so
That's
usually
very
another
true.
a good way that I've heard is also asking for a copy of a HUD statement.
Mhm.
I mean, it's one thing if, like, if I found them on PropStream and I know I can verify, okay, that's their LLC, they purchased the property, or they have a huge portfolio. I may ask for a
Mhm.
few things still, just to verify, but you don't maybe have to be as intense in your process as like when you verify somebody is in fact like does have a LLC. But if you're
Mhm.
posting in Facebook groups or stuff like Craigslist, you don't want to just
Right.
throw your deal out. So a few tips in terms of like how to market once you have a
Mhm.
deal, how to market on whether it's social media or Facebook or Craigslist is you don't typically want to show the address.
Mhm.
Maybe if some vague pictures, but for sure like the property conditions, just the basic information, and then you can just mention, hey, if you're interested, please email me here or give me a call or text, and we'll send more pictures.
Right.
Because a lot,
Right.
especially if you're starting out, and you'll get this a lot. You'll get so many replies back like share the address with me. Like
Mhm.
you're such a scam, like, and that's usually another indicator. Either somebody is like that, well known and is like a
Mhm.
one of those big buyers that's like, "Hey, I don't have time to answer these questions." And even then I'm like, "You're a dick. I don't even want to work with you."
Mhm. Right, right.
Or people will just be like, "This is ridiculous, blah blah." And it's
Mhm.
like, "Yeah, this is our standard practice for every deal." I'm sure you
Right.
understand. You wouldn't want anybody, so, this is why it's also important to build your buyers list so you don't really necessarily have to post it in those groups and deal with that.
Mhm.
You have like, but even now, like somehow I'm added to people's buyers list. I'm like,
I know,
how
me
did that
too.
happen? So you're able to, and people will just blast deals.
Mhm.
So it's
Mhm.
yeah, it is interesting how everything is done. I'm like, how did you get my email? I don't remember like posting it anywhere. Um, but that's also another way to kind of source deals. Like, hey, this person posted this deal. Like, let me
Yeah.
just reach out. So,
Yeah, yeah. And that's funny because, since I deal with on the family office side, I get like deals sent to me kind of all the time, just with the networking with brokers and all of that. So, which is great because if it's not a deal for, us, it might be a deal for, a wholesale situation or
right.
anything. That's why I love having both sides of the business, right? And, just you know, talking with people. I mean, I had a, I even talked to like managing partners for a brokerage, a couple weeks ago, and we're just talking about different deals and then different opportunities, and they heavily rely on their alumni from their college that
Mm,
they reach out to get listings and other opportunities and I told them that, if anything that's off market or something that you think might fit in the commercial side, we definitely would look at that deal, right? And so
mm,
they're like, okay, great, let's try to do business. And it's funny because when you are in this business for a little bit, you kind of get exclusivity on your buyers list,
mm,
and
mhm.
people want to be on your buyers list because they know that you do deals, right?
Right.
And so they're saying, how can I get added to your buyers list? And so you'll as you get into this business more and start doing more deals, more buyers are going to be, knowledge of, have knowledge of you in your market, right? So they might say, hey, how do I add myself to your buyers list? So that's a good thing from you networking and doing deals and closing deals on a regular basis.
Yeah, absolutely. And something like IG or TikTok, that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
becoming more where people are just reaching out. It's so easy. Just hit them on
I
their
know, right?
DMs.
Right, right.
And I at least I don't try to get anything out if I do message. I'm like, hey, I love what you're doing. Keep it up. I
Yep.
would love to connect at some point, but appreciate everything that you do. Let me know if there's anything I can help. And just something like that, or like even commenting on their posts as well.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I think the LinkedIn like tip is great and all, but also like getting engagement because if they're really
Mm-hmm.
are focused on like engaging with their in those platforms, they're going to reply back.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a great way to leverage like relationships. And I think another one that we haven't really talked about because with COVID, but attending events,
Mm-hmm.
RIAs, or conferences. That's something we're going to be attending next week,
Mhm.
multifamily conference, and that's always a really great opportunity to just get your elevator pitch ready. So that's something where it's like people are gonna mainly go to conferences. It's not really about the topics. I mean, that
Mhm.
I'm sure we'll learn a lot, but it's really the people that you're going to meet. And
Right.
being in that
Right.
space, where people are closing millions, billions of deals, you wanna, like, in a way you're rubbing shoulders, so you wanna present yourself and like, "Hey, this is what I do. Would love to
Mhm.
network." So that's also another great way to, just connect with people is attending these events. Like look up I think meetup.com is a great way. There's
Mhm.
always like a ton of great real estate. Just type in like real estate investing or real estate and just see what
Mhm.
pops up. you just look up your local RIA, because there you'll see cash buyers, you'll see other investors, wholesalers that you can like meet in person, and really kind of see like, you know, give a maybe a view under the hood of like what their process is like, and conferences. And I think
Mhm.
another tip too is, you know, instead of driving for dollars, like drive for buyers. Like
Mhm.
people are looking for
Mhm.
builders all the time. Like if,
That's
you
a
know,
good point.
especially if you focus on lots and stuff, like drive around, like look for builders or developers or whatever the case may be. Or if there's like a new development going on, like, you know, see who's developing it, and then reach out perhaps by email or by phone. They always have their phone number. It's always like developed
Mhm.
by, you know, company, reach us at, and they'll have a website or something. So it's just like little things like that that we don't really think about when we're starting out, or you know, getting started. So, I
Yeah.
mean, those are just easy things that you can do, to just put yourself out there.
Yeah. I love that because, I think I stopped over at a construction site last week and then talked to some of the workers there. And the GC wasn't there, but the general contract wasn't there, but they said they, run into the owner a lot, and he invests in other properties that they're working on. I was like, well, you give him my information. I said, if it works out, I'll definitely put you in my phone, and then I'll give you $1,000 referral. If we close a deal or something. So they're like, oh, really? So it's just like,
Was this just
you know,
like the workers or something,
yeah,
or
it was just the workers, and, the general contractor wasn't there, and I said, "If you get a chance to talk to the GC or the owner at some time, pass them my information, and we have deals all the time, so if it's something that, closes, then, I would thank you for the business." So, and
Mhm.
that's how I would thank you, is just a referral fee.
Yeah, do you have like business cards, or is it just kind of like, "Hey, here's my number."
Yeah, I usually my business card is a digital business card, so
Right.
you can just tap it and then it goes on their phone easily. But if they don't have that, then I'll just give them my cell phone and have them call me. And it's just it's nowadays it's so simple, right? I don't really have a business card that I send out. Everybody
Right.
loves the digital business card. They're like, I've never seen that before, and I was like, yeah, it's pretty convenient. So.
Yeah, what do you use for that digital business card?
It's a what do you call it? A NF. It's the same technology that you use to pay with your credit card, the tap card,
Oh,
right?
like Apple
So
Pay kind of thing?
yeah, similar to Apple Pay. So I just have um, like a plastic card that I can just set on the counter, and then they just tap it, and then my information will pop up, and they can download my um, all my contact information right there. So it has links to, our podcast. It has links to, all my social media, but also where they can download all my, phone number, email, all that stuff. So,
Nice. Yeah, it's just little stuff like that. I think it's really not that hard. I think either people are lazy or they kind of don't
hmm
know. Maybe they're scared too of like, you know, of putting themselves out there, of looking, because it can be intimidating. Like somebody like me
hmm
talking to a hedge fund or like a big
right,
time investor initially, I was just kind of like, you want to like, and this is where you really treat it as a long game. You want to sound a certain way too. Like,
sure,
you know what I mean? Like if you're trying to get into multifamily, you wanna, learn, like, the terminology, because
hmm
you wanna, I don't wanna say you wanna appear fake, or, like, where
hmm
but you kinda are faking it till you make it, right? Like, in
hmm
terms of
hmm
the, understanding or knowing what to ask for, or, presenting yourself a certain way. Because if they'll be able to smell you if you're, like, completely new, which is,
hmm
it's okay, but you just wanna, like, present yourself of, like, "Hey, this is how, this is what I do," and just being
hmm
confident with that. Maybe practicing like, how would you pitch what you do,
hmm
and just being confident in that. But I think that's probably maybe what's holding people back, is they're a little intimidated. Were you
hmm
ever intimidated, or Was it just kind of a thing, especially like meeting somebody in person? Like, I mean, I
Mhm.
know that you've kind of connected with bigger investors down in like the LA area. They've taken
Mhm.
you places. What's kind of been a way for you to be like, holy shit, like I'm connecting with Joy
Yeah.
here.
It's been quite an experience. Like I think when I first, especially on the multifamily, I was super nervous. I didn't know if I was saying the right thing or saying the right terminology, but I kind of knew enough to be dangerous type of thing, right? Um, so I was like learning on the fly type of thing, but
Mm,
I was able to build that enough confidence to where, it is a good deal and what I'm saying is right. I felt like I knew just a little bit more than the real estate agent that had it had listed,
mm,
right? So that kind of helped me build my confidence from there. But, getting in these rooms to where you're talking about, multi-million dollar deals and with these investors, it's a lot of listening, right? It's not more of you kind of talking to assert yourself as the expert per se. It's more uh, listening in these rooms to where you're talking to them and talking about deals and it's what you realize is that when you're talking real estate, it applies to $100,000 deals to $200 million deals,
mhm,
right? It's basically the same. It's just bigger numbers, right? And that's the one thing that made me realize, like, hey, it's not really about right the number. It's just about the quality of the deal. Like
mm,
everything has a certain breaking point, whether it's a deal or not, right?
right.
And with residential, it's more like the comps in their area. Like for commercial, it's more about the numbers and if the cap rates are right or the financials are correct or
Mhm,
the location is great. So it's a lot more factors. But same type of energy, if I can say that,
right.
regarding real estate, right? So when I got to the point where I was comfortable talking just about real estate and getting familiar with some of these tech or terminology, right? It was a lot easier for me to be comfortable in these rooms. It is
Right.
intimidating, I mean, but my partnership with the family office was coming from a place of learning, right? And they knew that I wanted to be at a certain level, but also learn how to be there. So,
Yeah, you're never
um,
too big for, when you're starting out, you didn't come off like, "Oh, I know what I'm doing," or,
no, no,
it's,
not at all.
yeah, it's like they took you under their wing, and I
Hmm.
think the same thing, like, you build rapport with sellers, you're building rapport with, we talk about listen to your sellers, listen to for the problems. It's the same thing with buyers, you wanna listen to the buy with the buyers, and build rapport with them, and always
Right.
consider, I'm a big advocate of the go-giver, where it's just like, hey, when you're connecting with somebody, like, listen
Hmm.
to what they have going on and, see how you can help with
Yeah.
that. And we've talked about that plenty of times, and that's it. That's all it is. You don't wanna be, like you said, be the one talking, you wanna sound like you're an expert, but there's so many ways you can do that, without, like, talking their ear off, for example,
Hmm.
because they may not wanna work with you if that's the case.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just important to really listen when you're in those rooms because you can take a lot from that. Even though you might not have said a lot, right? You're just absorbing a lot. So when
Right.
you're the follow-up person, really. You follow up with that particular broker or deal, or you're in constant communication with both sides. So
Mhm.
definitely you're going to have your voice in the deal, but ultimately when you first come across something and you you get into these calls or rooms and you're just kind of listening, and then where you can provide value for either
Right.
side if that's the case.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can leverage relationships when you meet people like, hey, I know this person that's in commercial and development. Hey, let's connect. Let
Mhm.
me connect you. That's
Mhm.
where it's like you're the go giver. Because what a lot of people
Mhm.
do is they keep everything to themselves, being like, well, I don't want you going ahead. So I
Mhm.
think that's a great, great tip. It looks like we got
Yeah.
some questions. What's going on, Dalen? Hold on.
What's up, Dalen?
Hold on. Question isn't showing up on here. Oh,
Okay.
there we go. There we go.
Oh.
What's the digital card called? Do you know
Oh
what the
crap. I don't have it right now, and I think it's called a NF. It's not a NFT. It's a I don't know the name of it. I can't
we'll
say it
get
right
back
now,
to you,
but
Dalen.
yeah, we'll get back to you, Dalen, about that.
Awesome. And then we got Ngozi. What's going on, girl? That's
What's
the
up?
honest struggle. Building that solid cash buyers list. Hedge funds are quite picky with deals. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's kind of the thing and why you kind of want to hedge funds, yeah, it's like, hey, I have a deal, and they'll tell you right away whether it isn't like whether you get the requirements up front from them, so that it's like, okay, this deal doesn't fit in their requirements, so I'm not even going to send it to them. I think is important, but kind of try the tips that we talked about, like reach out to some people on LinkedIn. Look out for on Instagram, look for or if it's like if you find them on LinkedIn and you have a name, like look up their name on Instagram or on Facebook.
Mhm.
So that's another way too to connect, because you'll get to know them on a personal level on Instagram for the most part. I mean, I think everybody almost has an Instagram at this point, or
Mhm.
maybe a TikTok. But I would copy their name, whatever you find, acquisition manager or whatever on LinkedIn. Like
Mhm.
paste that thing on Facebook, paste it on IG, and just see what you come up with, and kind of do the same process. That's helped me, and also the prop stream hack. I was able to actually with one of my deals, which kind of trickled into a relationship with the buyer, is I had locked up a deal, and it was taking me a while. I had found a buyer, um, but the price was super low. It was like 15K less than what I got it
Mm.
locked up for. So I was like, shit, like I'm gonna have to really or I think it was like 10K less or something like that. I was like, dang, I'm gonna have to renegotiate. I was like, is that the best you can do?
Mhm.
And they're like, yeah, because of X, Y, and Z, we'll have to demo. It was like a really old house on like a big lot. So it would basically be a demo and like a new build from there. So I reached out, and they gave me the price. So I was like, okay, there's no other buyers biting. Let me just go ahead and uh get this go talk to the buyer to get it the price down. So the
Mhm.
buyer was kind of thinking about it, and then I was able to get him down. Actually, it was I think from 65 or from 65 down to 50 or something like that.
Mm. Wow.
Um, and he because he had no options, he really needed to sell, and so I was like, "Okay, cool. Hey, buyer, I'm ready to go. Are you still down?" He was like, "Yeah, sure." And then I send the assignment agreement. He signs it, but I have a clause in my assignment that's like, "Hey, if funds aren't delivered to escrow by I think I have like a business day or a day, then the agreement is invalid or is voided." And he
Mhm.
wasn't submitting his EMD, and I was like, "What's going on?" I tried calling him, I tried emailing him. He did not
Mm.
reach back out, and I was like, "What the hell?" Like,
Right.
this is
Right.
a well-known like builder and a buyer in the my local area. And then literally a day later, like in my at my title, the escrow officer is trying to hit him up. No,
Mhm.
like, no success. I was like, and I just knew, I'm like, "This isn't a good sign." Like, and that's
Mhm.
another thing with buyers, which is why you have to request a good chunk of EMD that's reasonable to the price, of course. Some people standardize 10K EMD. Like, you never know with buyers. Like, that's how you can also tell how serious a buyer they may be a real buyer, but maybe, stuff happens and they just,
Mhm.
because if you think about it, a buyer, they're dealing with several projects going on left and right. Funds, sometimes they don't have any funds. So that's what happened with my buyer. He finally got back to me. He's like, "I'm so sorry, we can't do this. We're low on funds. We're managing 6 projects right now." And I was like, you should have just let me know. Like in the way he did, like he never got back to me until I had to like call them, an escrow officer.
That's
So I was like, you
crazy.
know what? Nah, man, I'm not gonna work with
Mhm.
you anymore. But I had to start from scratch. I'm like, shit, okay, I renegotiate the price. So that's a good point.
Mhm.
But let me try
Right.
marketing. So I did the prop stream hack, found an LLC that bought a property not too far from mine, another development.
Mhm.
And I looked them up because I try to find their information on open corporates. I couldn't find it. And I found a website once I kind of did some more digging. I reached out to
Mhm.
them and we were able to close in 10 days. Like really,
That's
really
awesome.
quick. Um, but that relationship, because I brought him a really good deal.
Mhm.
He was like, he called me like maybe a couple weeks. I think he went on like vacation and came back. He's like, hey, Gladia, I like what I really liked kind of how do you source your deals? I'm just a one man person. And I think
Mhm.
he double closes on some properties or does like wholesales land and stuff.
Mhm.
So he doesn't buy every property, but he was like, how do you do it? Like I would love to work out like where I can, I'll be the buyer and, you just bring me deals. So that's kind of what I've been doing where I'm not putting all my eggs in one basket. I've kind of
Sure.
built up a buyer's list, but I know who to go to first because like
Mhm.
he'll sometimes send me lists as well. He'd be like, hey, these are some properties I found, like hit them up. And so, that's kind of where I've like leveraged a relationship and we'll have phone calls and just talk about like whatever it is. So it's just, again, you never know. Like if you bring somebody a really good
Mhm.
deal and it's like a home run deal, even like
Right.
where it's a win-win, like
Right.
that's a way to like really build relationships that I didn't know was going to come. I've closed
Mhm.
two other deals since with him because of
That's
it.
awesome.
I think Ngozi, if you're still on, just try to just reach out yourself. Maybe not going through the traditional Facebook group or whatever, but
Mhm.
LinkedIn. See what you find, or call some people, or if you have a deal, see how you can add value. So,
Mhm.
really great way to build a buyer's list. We got another question. How are you both marketing deals to your buyers? You wanna go take that, Tim?
Yeah. Right now, what I do is I have a handful of quality buyers in my market. So one of the biggest things I do is just give a soft like call to them or soft message, hey, I have a deal in this area or this zip code or whatever the case may be.
Mhm.
It's just give them a brief overview without giving them too much details. And they
Yeah.
said, yeah, send it over, or no, we're pass on that deal. So I just do it like a kind of soft pitch to my buyers. And then some of my buyers just want me to send everything to them, right? So I'll just send it to them in an email, and then I just market it that way. If it's somewhere that I don't have extensive buyers list, then what I'll do is kind of tap into my the ones that I purchased, and or
Mhm.
if I have people that are in that market, I'm willing to JV. Like I don't want to. I might have 2 more other deals that I'm working on, and I don't have time to, source the buyer on that. So I'll just pull the JV card and be happy to JV with someone
Yeah.
that has a buyer in that area. So that's kind of how I market. I don't really right now. I don't really traditionally market the Facebook way anymore because I do have established buyers in my markets that I go to. But I'm constantly doing the LinkedIn networking and also talking about my business daily. So.
Yeah, that's huge, because if we all know as we learn in real estate, it's all about speed. Like,
Hmm.
if you should be able to turn around the deal within 24 hours or 48 hours, the max. If it's taking a little bit longer, doesn't mean you won't find a buyer, but speed kills deals, speed kills momentum, everything.
Hmm.
Because especially and that was kind of one of my main issues with like being solopreneur, right? And like why you
Hmm.
should leverage JVing is if and I have like a 9 to 5 too. If I'm focusing on this deal, like getting it locked up because once you get locked up, it's like it's a whole process, right? You gotta get the agreement out, and then
Hmm.
then you go straight to marketing to buyers. So for me, I don't submit to the escrow officer until I have both. documents. I could, but I've learned, I was like, I'm not going to put it through. I'm like, if I have a buyer, then of course that makes sense. Because if it doesn't work out, I just cancel with I still send them the seller a cancellation
Mhm.
form that just says, hey, it's voided, blah blah blah. But for me, I'm literally like, okay, how can I find a buyer? Let me hit up my buyers lists, and especially if you're a virtual market, maybe you may start out doing the Facebook thing, if you haven't established a good market or a good buyers list. But I've also, like you said, started connecting with other people in that network as well. If it's something, because if anything, I rather would JV. But we've definitely watched our JV episode and like things to look out for, because sometimes it can be tricky. You
Yeah.
have to also do your due diligence. So if it's somebody that you do know, and even if it's somebody you do know, you have to kind of also like get a feel for them. Like, okay, do you like, with the thing with JVing is like they have to work as hard as I do. They have to be as committed and invested as I am. So it's really important to lay out those roles. But it depends on what market. So my local market as well, I don't do the Facebook thing. I first reach out to my first buyer that I talked about, and they're can be pretty really candid. I'll just be like, hey, here's a lead. I think the price can be around this price point. You let me know what you think. Here's the conditions. And usually for me, he'll be like, oh, you know what, the county is a little annoying with they're requiring this for lots. So it's going to
Mhm.
cost me 16K to get at this price point. So we'll have to be at this price point. I'll be like, well, do you have some wiggle room? So I try and negotiate with him a little bit, but
Mhm.
I'm able to get a price from him just from like conversating. And so if it's way off, then I'll kind of connect with other buyers that I have that are in that area. But I always go to him first because we've developed a really strong relationship. So once I have that and it works with this first buyer, then it's crazy. It's a weird, in a weird way, I'm JVing with him because he has
Mhm.
his connections with an escrow officer or a title company. He goes into the property, does the due diligence himself. So it's like you're paying me, but we're JVing together. It's kind of weird.
Right. Right. Right.
But it's like once I hand it off to him, I'm just keeping him updated on the seller. He's keeping me updated on the process. So that's really helped out. But it, like, once you establish a good buyers list, like, you won't really have to do the full Facebook marketing,
Mm-mm.
or the Facebook posts, Craigslist posts. Um, once you like, and I think this is why it's important for people to also market to buyers or cash buyers, so that they have a substantial list that they can email to. So you're going to have your top buyers that you should always send deals to if it fits their criteria. And that's
Mhm.
another thing, is like you learn your knowledge of like what a good deal is also like their requirements. You can be like, no, I'm not going to waste their time in sending them this deal. I'm going to send them this because it fits their criteria, stuff like that,
Mhm.
area code. Um, so yeah, those, I kind of was like went all over the place, but that's kind of like things that I do to market deals to buyers.
No, that was good. I mean, I think, and that relationship that you have with your buyer is it works, and you may
Yeah.
have a lot of people have different relationships with different buyers and different ways of handling things, but it sounds like what you're going through with this particular buyer works for the both of you, and you've closed a couple deals with each other, so it's a
Yeah.
good relationship.
Yeah, exactly. Where, as long as it's a win-win on both sides.
Hmm.
It's like for him, he's like, "Hey, as long as the deal's good," he's like, "I don't care how much you make." And that's how, like, you want buyers to say that, because there's gonna be
Sure.
buyers, and which is why people double close, right? For
Hmm.
certain deals,
Hmm.
because they're like, I don't trust the buyers, which, I understand. Like, you're dealing with one deal right now where you're gonna double close because, it's a
Hmm.
substantial amount,
Right.
possibly. So,
Right.
I still think, yeah, having a process, having a good title company, which we didn't really talk about too, which is kind of part of like connecting with cash buyers, is connecting with the title company. They work with
Absolutely.
cash buyers all the time. So that's always a good way to be like, hey, like, who have you closed with, or do you have any deals, or just stuff like that. So we can go on and on. I know we've been on for over an hour now.
Right, right.
I feel like we're just kind of getting started, but
Exactly.
Um, yeah, but no, I think there's this is kind of an area when you're starting out, you only focus on the seller acquisition side, but there's the disposition is probably like tougher, I think,
Mhm.
than
Yeah.
doing acquisitions.
Yeah. And maybe what we can do is, I guess what's this Wednesday, maybe later this week or something, get on IG Live and talk more about
Absolutely.
it, and then have people ask questions about the buyers, because I mean this is very important because this is how you actually get to deal
How you get
a
paid.
close. Yeah, exactly. How you get paid. So.
I love it. And there's a few things we're in the works as well with we're working on a wholesaling course, very basic
Hmm.
kind of stuff for people starting out. So definitely be on the lookout for that. And yeah, doing IG lives for sure on a regular basis, whether it's related to the topic we talk about on throughout the week, or
Hmm.
it can be about whatever we'll be talking about. So really excited though. Appreciate you guys in the comments and posting your questions. Love to see the engagement, but hope you guys got a lot out of it. You can reach out to us anytime on IG. I'm
Yep.
Real Estate Gladia or Mr. Team REI, or our Get the Bag podcast on IG. Get underscore the bag podcast. Like, share, all
Yep.
the things that we talk about. But
Absolutely.
appreciate you guys joining us. Really excited to kind of share. I think we'll be on next Wednesday, as I think we travel Thursday for the
Hmm.
conference. So excited for the weeks to come after that to share like what we've learned, especially in the multifamily space,
Hmm.
and like networking with people. So that can also kind of be another topic. But thank you guys so much for tuning in
Yeah.
with us. Anything you want to leave the people with, Tim, before we
No,
hop
I
off?
appreciate y'all, and thank you for everything, and thank you for all your comments, and we appreciate all the love that you've been giving us on the platform, listening on podcasts, and then also on social media. So,
That's it.
until next week. Yep.
All right, guys, have a great day. Let's crush it. And yeah, catch you guys next week, 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern. See y'all.
All right. Bye.